What's up, guys? I'm Dwayne, and I am Blackboard Gaming, where I teach you about all these great board games that are out there, waiting to be played by you and yours.
I'm a simple man, don't wanna complicate ya.
Today, I want to give you guys a heads up on a small little card game that's coming to Kickstarter in the next couple of days, and that game is called Doomlings. I received an advanced copy from the creators of this game, and since then have played it with a couple of groups of friends. Before I tell you what I think about this game, let's go to the table for a quick overview of how this game is played. Doomlings is a 2 to 6 player card game where the players are trying to build up their own personal trait piles to score in-game victory points. To set up the game, we would take the Birth of Life card, put that to the side. We would take the 15 cards that have age cards that have catastrophe written at the top, put that off to the side, and then we would take the other 25 age card, give them a good shuffle, and then deal out 3 stacks of 3, returning the rest to the box. Then we would take the catastrophe cards, give them a good shuffle, and deal 1 to each of these stacks. Then we would give each of those stacks a shuffle and then place them on top of each other. And then we would take this and put it right on the top of that deck. So you would end up with a deck of 13 cards with the Birth of Life card on top. And you will place this deck of cards in the middle of the table in reach of all players. Next, each player receives one of these gene pool cards and they place it in front of them with the number 5 facing up, which I'll explain why in a minute. Then we would take this massive deck of trait cards, give them a good shuffle, and place them in the middle of the table in reach of all players. Then we will randomly select someone to be the dealer, and the dealer will always take the first turn in the game. So the dealer will first deal out 5 cards to all the players, and then he will reveal the top card, which is the Birth of Life. And as you can see, the Birth of Life tells you that your gene pool, which is your hand of cards, is 5. So that's why you put this gene pool card with the 5 facing up. Once the top card of the age deck has been revealed, starting with the dealer, each player can play 1 card from their hand, which is their gene pool, and they can play it onto the table in front of them, and that is known as their trait pile. So let's say I take my 5 cards, I decide to play this, the Dreamer. The Dreamer is going to be worth 1 point at the end of the game for me, but it has an effect that gives me +1 gene pool. So now I can hold 6 cards in my hand. And I will turn my gene pool card with the 6 facing up to show that I can do that now. Once I play the card, then I would stabilize my hand. So I draw back up to my hand size. So I have 4. I would draw 2 cards from the top of the trait deck. So let's take a look at some of these trait cards. This one, Selective Memory. When you play it, you can play a card from the discard pile. So you get to play 2 cards that turn. Fangs don't have an effect, but it gives you 2 victory points. Chimeri, when you play this card, you could swap him with a trait from an opponent's trait pile. So if you see a high value card in someone else's trait pile, you could switch it out with this one. This one, Impatience, lets you draw 3 cards when you play it. Flight, you get to swap hands with an opponent. So there is player interaction. And this one, what is this one called? Branches. Yep. You will get +1 for every pair of green traits in your opponent's trait pile. So you can score some points off your opponent. There are also dominant trait cards in the game, which have this star up in the upper right hand corner. Players can play up to 2 dominant cards into their trait pile. And once played, they cannot be removed, they can't be discarded, they can't be stolen. They're there for the remainder of the game. If ever an effect causes a player to play a third dominant trait card, they would just discard that card. So let's take a look at some of these. This one's called Heroic. It's going to give you 7 points at the end of the game. And to play, you must have 3 or more green traits in your trait pile. This one, called Viral, is worth 0 points, but at World's End, choose a color. Opponents receive -1 for each trait of that color in their trait pile. I'll explain World's End in a moment. This one, Hyperintelligence, gives you 3 victory points at the end of the game. And at World's End, opponents discard 1 trait from their trait pile at random. So yeah, some of these dominant cards can be real mean. Once all players have played a card into their trait pile, then we will reveal the next age card. That one's called Fortune, and we get to draw 2 cards. So we draw 2 cards, but we're over our hand size, but we don't need to stabilize or discard down to our hand size until the end of our turn. Let's take a look at some of the other age cards that may come up. So this one says Tectonic Shift, players cannot play green traits. So if I had this in my hand, I wouldn't be able to play it. Arid Lands cannot play blue traits. So I wouldn't be able to play this one. This one says if you play a trait with no effect, you may play another trait with no effect. So if I had this in my hand, it has no effect. I could play it. But since this is in play, I'll be able to play this one now. Because we're past this one, so we're on this age. So I can play this now. Let's say when we pull an age card, we reveal a card that has Catastrophe written at the top. So these things will happen. -1 gene pool. So remember, I had 6, but now I go down to 5. All other players will go to 4. They will flip from that 5 to that 4. And then all players will have to discard 1 card from their hand for every colorless trait in their trait pile. So for any of these that you have in your trait pile, you have to discard a card. Now you see there's World's End. This doesn't activate unless it is the 3rd Catastrophe that was pulled. Remember, there are 3 in this deck. Also, if this is the 3rd Catastrophe, the game ends immediately, and then this activates. And all players will have to discard 1 green trait from their trait pile. At game end, all the players will count up their points. So this guy will be worth 2 points, but he's also +2 if blue is the highest color count in my trait pile. It is not, because I have mostly green, so this is only worth 2. This guy here is worth +1 for every pair of green traits in my trait pile, including this one. I got 2 pair, so this is actually worth 3 points. Swarm, the value is equal to the number of swarm traits in play. So I got 3 swarm traits in play. So each of these cards is worth 3 points. That gives me 9 points. This one will give me 4 points. This one is worth, the value is equal to the number of kidneys in my trait pile, including this one. I only have 1, so this will be worth 1 point. Once all the players counted up all their points, we will see who had the most points, and they will be the winner of Doomlings. So what did I think of my plays of Doomlings? I really enjoy my plays of this game. I've played it with 2 different groups up to now. The first group being my regular board game group, which I meet up with every week. And we usually play heavier games. And the second was I had a couple friends that came over to visit, and I brought this game out. And both times, everybody at the table enjoyed themselves. We found ourselves cracking up laughing at some of the things that is written on the trait cards. I love the art on all the cards. The art on the age cards I really love the most because they use these low number of colors to depict the landscapes on the age cards. And the trait cards were just whimsical. But they really did the job of letting you know that this game cannot be taken seriously. It is just a really, really fun game. Mechanics, hand management. Making sure you control your gene pool. The gene pool card says you have 5 cards in your hand. Make sure you got 5 cards in your hand. At the end of your turn, if you have over 5, you discard. If you have lower than 5, you draw back up. And as you can see in the overview, there are cards that will raise your gene pool, but there are cards that will lower your gene pool. So you got to act accordingly. Set collection. You're just building up your trait pile. You're trying to score the maximum amount of points at the end of the game. Some cards play off other cards. Some cards mess with other people. So there is some interaction. There's take that in the game. But like I said, this game can't be taken too seriously. It's just a little fun game that does not overstay its welcome. The game lasts about, almost, it doesn't even last 30 minutes. So my board game group, this is a great game that we will play. Like if we play a heavier game that night and we want to give our mind a rest before we play the next game, but keep our mind active, this is the best game to pull out. Because it's still a little bit of strategy you got to pay attention to when building your trait pile. This is an easy game to teach. So anybody that's just new to board gaming, they will like this game. They just have to get used to the card because there's 150 cards in this game. So there is a good amount of variability, and it takes more plays to start like recognizing cards that come out. Like, oh, okay, I know that what that does, so I'm ready for it. Overall, Doomlings, great game. It's coming to Kickstarter this week. I will leave a link in the description below where you could check this game out on Kickstarter, and I'll also leave a link to the website where you could find out any more information about this game. I like this game. Thank you guys for sending this game to me. It's just a prototype, but I'm pretty sure I'm going back to Kickstarter. I'm Dwayne. This has been Blackboard Gaming, and I will see you next time.